E4. Let's roll here. Okay, Sicilian defense. And, all right. Oh, wait a second. I think one of the earlier games in this stream, I was playing against this guy. And there were weaknesses created. So I think in that game, this move was played. Is it going to be played again? That's a problem. Last time when it was played here, I played knight b5. My opponent is saying, yep, what are you listening to stream? Don't you dare. I'm still going to play knight b5. d6 is where I want to be. I actually suggested bishop b4 as a possibility. And I was talking about also a6 and queen c7. Was actually bishop b4 the best idea? Because of this knight b5 move, connecting the knights, preventing white from doubling my c-pawns, and threatening that d6 square. And as a continuation, if, let's say d6 was played there, I could play a3, and I think black is then forced to give up their dark square bishop, and that's the situation we're presented with right now. Now, my natural instinct here is to just recapture the bishop and not ruin my structure, of course. But maybe there's something to actually keeping my knight right here on b5. Because I can be assured of what? I can be assured of a knight sitting here on d6. I'm actually thinking about going forward with that. Pawn takes. Knight check. Maybe an eventual bishop coming out to a3. I'm not going to do it. I still see an advantage in this instance. I have the bishop pair, and my opponent has no compensation for having given up the bishop pair. This is not a good idea to give up that dark square bishop like this. There were many dark square weaknesses in that first game. b6, d6, f6, h6. These aren't weakened right now, these three. But just having one weakness right here is maybe enough to turn out to be a serious problem for black. Because right now, because of this weakness, you might already be, as white, I might already be able to say the knight can't play here because of queen here. And then, you know, the queens are going to have to come off and stuff. So, what about queen here right now? This is trouble. How do you get rid of the queen? This is the big question. Uh-oh. How do you get rid of the queen? There she goes, and there she will stay for a while, I believe. Uh-oh. As a follow-up move, what can I be doing? Where do my bishops want to be? Bishop on d3 seems pretty good. I'm going to go with that. My dark square bishop, on the other hand, I'm not sure where I want it just yet. Actually, the bishop move is a bit off. In fact, because eventually I want to have a rook on the d file. And this bishop's going to be in the way of that. This is a half-open file, so I should have been looking for what? Should have been looking to play a rook there and put pressure on this pawn. Okay, let me go with this. Still keeping a close eye on the d6 square. Knight plays here, I just back up with my bishop. Oh, my queen. I didn't realize my queen could be hit like that. Okay, that's actually the only square for it except c7. c7 or a3 were my only choices. Rook to d1, back the bishop up. I could look for f4, f5, maybe knight b5 to d6 if this knight starts to get back into play. What is this knight up to? What's the scoop with that knight? What is the plan? That knight needs to go somewhere else. I guess I could have played rook to d1 as well. That That's dropping material. Some calculation here. Take, and I don't know that it really matters which one of these two squares, b5 or e2. Go here, eyeing some more squares. This weakened square, d6, maybe here in some variations with the tempo on the rook. Knight takes pawn. I think maybe this is best. And why was I even really considering that move? I shouldn't have considered that. Queen here, and then get that pawn. I have it now. Queen b4. There's no way to defend that pawn a second time. He is the weak link. Double pawn right there on the double pawns on the d file. And what else? Okay, well, I'm netting material here. And since I'm going to be up some material, I'd like to be in a position to be exchanging pieces now. Bishop takes knight, I take the queen, and then recapture. Queen takes queen, knight takes queen. Bishop takes, pawn takes. And then the c file becomes completely opened, and I'll be in a position to get on it right away, since my rooks are defended. And we could be seeing that right away. Now, just being super technical about things, if this c file does open up, okay, if it did open up, which rook to play to c? The a rook or the c rook? Often a very important question to have a good answer to. I think it would be more correct to go with the f rook so that my king is that much quicker to maybe getting towards the center if he needs to get to the center very quick. Pressure on this pawn. I'm going to play here. A couple reasons. My bishop is freed up from its defensive duty on e4. And here we go. King f2 towards the center. If you're going to have a good end game, you need to make sure you know how to get your king working, how to get it involved, when to get it involved. And this is a good time to get it involved. It's simplified enough and more material is dropping. I guess that move was played so the knight could play here. Less than a minute. Fewer time you have, more mistakes you make. Knight c7 fork. Rook d1. Bishop c4. These are ways to improve upon the positioning of the pieces. Okay. I think just playing here is a good idea. Main reason for that, just so that what? Just so this pawn doesn't look to trade itself off for my healthy pawn. That's another thing you could be doing in your own games. Comparing your pawns to your opponent's pawns. Recognizing that this e pawn is much healthier than this d pawn. And so if the d pawn gets to this point and is able to exchange itself off for the e pawn, black is improving slightly. So I want to keep this on the board because I see it, in other words, as a potential target. And that's what I'm going to be looking to do now. Double up on the d file. This is the only half open file I have to work with. Rook d2, rook d1. First things first, defend the threats. Let your pawns defend your pawns. And let your pieces do other things. If the knight plays here, I calmly back up to c2. Double up. Soon enough, there's going to be a lot of pressure. And just to be extra cautious, I'm going to develop or retreat to this square in case there's some sacrifice here. And let me add one more attacker to that pawn. I could do that by way of e3 and f5, or even in this case, there's now forks. Time. No time. Okay, good game. Let's back up. Need to take away. This is where you could learn to improve your game right here. These rough thoughts right after the game. So, what's the big idea here? The bishop's decision to play to b4, I think, was actually something I had suggested. So I want to draw attention to that, and I think it's actually a mistake for me to have suggested bishop to b4. I think I was also throwing out ideas of knight f6, queen c7, and a6. I think it's actually not a good idea to be going with bishop b4 because of this knight move, connecting the knights and then still eyeing this square. Maybe it is a line, but if it does turn out to be a line, I can pretty much be assured that the follow-up is not going to be to take the knight. You really do need to make certain that you keep your dark square bishop around. As soon as you make this e6 move, definitely when you make this e6 move, your dark square bishop becomes all the more important. Do not be so quick to give up your dark square bishop like this. There's no compensation. You don't get structural damage. You don't create structural damage on the white end. And you have to constantly work around this queen sitting on d6 now. That's not the way to go. So let me make this suggestion. Let me make sure I really mean it this time. Let's see. Because again, I did suggest bishop b4, a6, queen c7, knight f6. I think these three, I'm pretty sure these three are ones you could be running with. Knight f6, queen c7, or a6. I think this, why not go with the knight here? And then we could get into a fairly long-winded variation. Knight takes, pawn takes. e5, knight d5, knight e4. I think queen c7 at that point, putting pressure on my pawn. I guess you do need to know a decent amount of theory if you're going to be running with this, but look into those lines. Bishop b4. Stay away from that one. And sorry about that, actually, because it's something that I made reference to, so I'm now having to realize that and make the correction, admit my mistake right there with what I was sharing early on in the stream.